What would you do if someone spent years telling you that you'd never amount to anything? What if they made you scrub their floors whilst reminding you daily that you were beneath them? What if years later you found yourself in a position to decide their fate? This is the story of Amara, a cleaning lady who became a judge and faced the woman who tried to destroy her spirit. Trust me, you're not ready for how this ends. Picture this: a grand house in an upmarket neighborhood. Marble floors that gleam like mirrors, and the constant smell of bleach that burns your nostrils. That's where we find Amara, 24 years old, on her hands and knees, scrubbing away whilst her boss stands over her like a prison warden. Meet Margaret Whitmore, the kind of woman who wears her privilege like armor and uses it as a weapon. Tailored blazer, perfectly styled hair, and a voice that could cut glass when she was displeased, which, let's be honest, was most of the time when it came to Amara. Faster, Amara. Margaret's sharp voice cuts through the silence. You've been in this room for half an hour? Do you think I'm paying you to have a little rest with that cloth? Amara keeps her eyes down, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, ma'am. I'll be quicker. But Margaret wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I don't know why I put up with you, she continues, arms folded, looking down at Amara like she's something unpleasant. She stepped in. My last cleaner managed twice the work in half the time. Perhaps some people simply aren't cut out for anything more than cleaning up filth. Now, those words might sound harsh to you and me, but to Amara, they were daggers straight to the heart. Because what Margaret didn't know, what she couldn't be bothered to find out, was that Amara had been up since before dawn. She'd caught 2 buses across town, carrying a tatty bag stuffed with cleaning supplies and something else entirely. A stack of borrowed law textbooks, books she'd read until her eyes burned, long after her body screamed for sleep. 24 Amara looked older. Goshen had carved lines into her face that shouldn't have been there for years. Her dreams seemed mad to everyone around her. Even her mates took the mickey. A cleaner studying law? It sounded barmy to everyone except her. But she clung to the idea that education could free her from floors that never stayed clean. From voices that constantly reminded her of her place in the world. Are you even listening, girl? Margaret's voice dragged her back to reality. Yes, ma'am, Amara mumbled, scrubbing harder until her wrist ached. Stand up, Amara obeyed, brushing her damp hands against her apron. Margaret stepped closer, eyes narrowing like she was inspecting something distasteful. Look at you, always with that pathetic expression. Wipe it off your face. You're lucky to even have this job. There are plenty of girls who'd bite my hand off for this opportunity. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am? Say it like you mean it. Yes, ma'am, Amara repeated, louder this time, though the words stuck in her throat. Margaret smiled that cruel little smile of hers. Remember, you work for me. You live by my rules. Don't ever start thinking you're equal to the people in this house. Equal, the word hung in the air like smoke. Amara had never asked to be treated as an equal. She just wanted to be treated as human. When Margaret finally left the room, Amara sank back to her knees, gripping that cloth so tight her knuckles went white. Silent tears hit the polished marble beneath her. She was uncrying for pity, she was crying. Because surviving in this house day after day felt like carrying a boulder on her chest. She remembered her first day, desperate for work after losing her mom with no family left to turn to. Margaret had made her spin around like she was buying livestock, then finally said, "You'll do." From that moment, Amara learned to bite her tongue, to let the insults wash over her, because every pay packet meant food, rent, and maybe one more month where she didn't have to abandon her dream. The nights were brutal. She'd finished scrubbing loose until her knees were purple with bruises, then hunkered down over constitutional law books, highlighting passages by the pathetic light of a borrowed desk lamp. Her hands shook from exhaustion, but she pressed on, whispering the words aloud to memorize them. Her world was split in two, the cleaner on her knees during the day, the secret law student by night. Every insult from Margaret became fuel. Every humiliation became another reason she wouldn't give up. But the pain was real. There were days she felt her spirit bending so far it nearly snapped. Days she wondered if she had the strength to become more than just a cleaner. Then she'd remember her mom's last words. "Amara, you're meant for more. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Adored. Margaret's coldness, the snide remarks about her skin, her clothes, her place in the world. She endured the endless scrubbing, the loneliness, the hunger when she saved every penny for tuition instead of proper meals. She endured until endurance itself became her superpower. And though Margaret never noticed, there was a quiet fire behind Amara's eyes that grew stronger with every cruel word. Because Amara knew something Margaret could never see. One day she would be on her knees in someone else's house. One day she'd stand tall, wearing robes Margaret couldn't imagine her in. That dream, fragile and precious, was the only thing keeping her alive in that house. Years crawled by in this cycle: insult, endurance, secret study. What Margaret never saw was the pile of law books in Amara's tiny flat, their spines cracked from late nights and weary fingers. There were mornings Amara nearly didn't make it, nights she fell asleep over her notes, waking with ink smeared across her cheek. But she clung to her dream with a desperation that bordered on defiance. Rejection letter after rejection letter from law schools only made her more determined. When a community scholarship program finally gave her a chance, she grabbed it with both hands. She worked in Margaret's mansion by day, studied law in packed classrooms by night, and wrote essays at weekends, whilst her body begged for rest. Margaret never had a clue. To her, Amara was still just the cleaner, still beneath her notice. When she spotted the girl's exhaustion, she'd sneer. If you can't handle cleaning, what else could you possibly do? The irony was razor sharp. Even as Margaret belittled her, Amara was preparing for her bar exams. Years dragged forward, each harder than the last. But one morning, everything changed. Amara held in her trembling hands the letter that transformed her world. Congratulations, you have passed the bar examination. She sank to her knees the same way she had countless times scrubbing floors. Only this time she was weeping from pure triumph. From that moment, her world flipped completely. Courtrooms replaced marble halls. Legal robes replaced cleaning uniforms. She became attorney Amara Daniels, then Judge Daniels, a name that commanded respect, not pity. Her rise wasn't quick or easy, but it was unstoppable. And then came the day when the past crashed back into her present. Amara sat at the bench in her black robes, her presence calm but commanding. The courtroom hushed as the bailiff called the next case. Margaret Whitmore, defendant. The name hit the air like a stone dropped in still water. Heads turned. Amara lifted her eyes, and there she was. Margaret, older now, her once stern face drawn with stress. Margaret froze mid-step, her face going even paler as her gaze locked with the judge's. For a moment, her lips parted like she'd seen a ghost. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Margaret stumbled to her seat, still staring, blinking rapidly. Her voice barely a whisper. Amara, ... Judge Daniels straightened her papers, her expression calm despite her thundering heart. She didn't flinch. Shh. Mrs. Whitmore, you may address this court as your honor. Gasps rippled across the room. Margaret's mouth opened, but no words came. The woman who once demanded Amara look her in the eye just to belittle her now struggled to hold her gaze. As proceedings began, Amara listened with steady composure. Margaret was accused of financial fraud, manipulating her staff and pinching funds from charities meant to help struggling families. The very arrogance Amara had endured was now laid bare for all to see. Every piece of testimony, every document was a reminder that cruelty always leaves a trail. Margaret tried to defend herself, voice trembling. This is all a misunderstanding. I've always been generous. Ask anyone. I gave opportunities to people who had nothing. Her eyes darted toward Amara, desperate, searching for recognition, for mercy. But Judge Daniels remained resolute. She remembered every insult, every time Margaret had told her she was nothing more than a cleaner. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. When the verdict was read, the courtroom fell silent. Guilty. Margaret's face crumpled. She looked at Amara with wide, disbelieving eyes. For once, she had no sharp words, no power to twist the narrative. She was simply powerless. The gavel struck. This court is adjourned. Margaret stood slowly, knees shaking. Amara, please. I didn't mean all those things over the years. I never thought. ... Double quotes, her voice cracked, all arrogance stripped away. Amara descended from the bench, her robes flowing back straight. She stopped a few feet from the woman who'd once towered over her. I endured your cruelty because I had no choice, she said quietly, her voice even but heavy with truth. But every word you used to humiliate me became a building block for my future. You tried to keep me down, Margaret. Instead, you pushed me higher. Tears burned in Margaret's eyes, but Amara turned and walked past without another glance. Outside the courthouse, the sun was warm on her face. Reporters called her name, cameras flashing, but Amara wasn't thinking about them. She was thinking about nights when her hands bled on marble floors, about her mom's voice urging her forward, about the moment she almost broke but didn't. She breathed deeply, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She hadn't just survived. She'd conquered. Behind her, Margaret was led away, her once proud figure hunched in defeat. This story absolutely floors me because it shows what's possible when someone refuses to let others define their worth. Amara didn't have money, connections, or fancy education. She had something far more powerful, unbreakable: determination, and the refusal to accept that someone else's opinion of her was the truth. Think about Margaret's shock when she realized the woman she'd treated like dirt was now in a position of ultimate authority over her. The cleaner she'd belittled was now wearing judicial robes, commanding a courtroom. But here's what I love most about this story. Amara didn't let bitterness consume her. She could have thrown the book at Margaret purely for revenge, but she chose justice instead. That's the mark of someone who truly rose above their circumstances. How many of us have been told we're not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough? How many times have people tried to box us into their limited vision of what we can achieve? Amara's story proves that other people's prejudices and cruelty don't have to become your reality. Every insult can become motivation. Every setback can become a setup for a comeback. If this story's inspired you to never give up on your dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, then smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe for more stories that'll remind you that your current situation isn't your final destination. Drop a comment below. Have you ever proved wrong someone who underestimated you? What dreams are you working toward that others think are impossible? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, success isn't just about reaching your goals. It's about becoming the person strong enough to achieve them. And sometimes, the people who try to break you end up being the ones who make you unbreakable. Until next time, keep climbing, keep dreaming, and never let anyone convince you that you're not meant for greatness. Cheers.